What if the fate of an entire war rested not on the clash of armies, not on the thunder of tanks or the blaze of artillery, but on the capture or loss of a single man? In the relentless crucible of modern conflict, legends are often forged in the shadows, and sometimes the pivot on which history turns is not a grand offensive, but the silent, desperate pursuit of one elusive leader. Such was the case with General Michael Cross, whose very presence on the battlefield became the hope and heartbeat of his army's embattled resistance. General Cross was no ordinary officer. He was renowned for throwing away the rulebook and writing his own script on the fly. Where others saw chaos, he saw opportunity. Where his enemies prepared for standard maneuvers, Cross would strike from oblique angles, feinting, retreating, and then unleashing blindingly swift offensives that left his adversaries reeling. In the annals of military history, few commanders have demonstrated such a consistent talent for transforming dire disadvantage into sudden advantage, much like the legendary Hannibal at Cannae, or Napoleon at Austerlitz, who turned desperate odds into defining victories by refusing to fight on predictable terms. But Cross was more than just a master tactician. He was a paradox, a leader whose armies endured despite constant shortages, relentless pressure, and a technologically superior enemy. His troops, famously loyal and fiercely adaptable, weathered the storm of war not just out of duty, but because they believed in Cross's uncanny ability to find hope in the hopeless. Every defeat became a rallying cry. Every setback spun into a chance for innovation. Even when supplies dwindled, Cross's command transformed scarcity into creative strategy, recycling damaged equipment, improvising with local materials, and developing tactics that stretched limited resources to their breaking point. Military analysts watched in growing alarm. Time and again, they observed that wherever Cross commanded, the enemy front refused to break. It was as if he stitched together the very fabric of resistance, binding his soldiers with a confidence that bordered on the supernatural. After months of grueling combat, one chilling conclusion emerged. As long as Cross led, the enemy was unbreakable. Every attack was met with an unpredictable counterstroke. Every attempt at encirclement was deftly evaded, and even when outgunned, Cross's forces found a way to hold. It became clear that Cross was not merely a leader. He was the nerve center, the strategist, and the inspiration all rolled into one. The entire resistance seemed to orbit around his will. Remove Cross, and the entire structure could collapse like a house of cards. This insight echoed throughout history. Consider the fall of Napoleon after Waterloo, or the chaos that swept through Alexander the Great's empire after his sudden death. In these cases, the removal of a single individual upended entire systems, revealing just how fragile even the most formidable organizations can be when they rely too heavily on one mind. Recognizing this, the High Command convened in secrecy. They faced a decision as profound as any in the history of warfare. Continue bleeding resources in a grinding war of attrition, or take the ultimate risk and target Cross himself. The stakes could not have been higher. Success would mean shattering the enemy's command structure, flipping the tide of battle, and potentially saving tens of thousands of lives. But failure? Failure would mean squandering elite resources and leaving a genius adversary unchallenged, a disaster that could demoralize the entire war effort. Thus, a plan was born, a plan as bold as it was dangerous. A joint task force of intelligence operatives and elite special operations commandos was assembled. Their mission: to track, isolate, and capture General Michael Cross at any cost. What hung in the balance was not just a battle, nor even a campaign, but the very momentum of the war itself. This was not a mission that would be won by brute force. The real story here was the power of precision, of targeting the linchpins that silently hold complex systems together. The hunt for General Cross would test the limits of espionage, technology, and human daring. Every move would count, and the margin for error would shrink to nothing. Most generals follow the rules. Cross rewrote them. To understand why Cross became such a singular target, one must appreciate the nature of his command. Unlike most leaders who delegated and trusted their subordinates, Cross operated a hyper-centralized system. Every key decision, every pivot in the battle plan, flowed through him alone. His peers and predecessors had relied on staff officers and standard procedures, but Cross relished unpredictability. He was famous for layered defenses, for swiftly redeploying his reserves in the middle of a firefight, and for launching perfectly timed counterstrikes that caught even the most seasoned adversaries off guard. Take, for example, the infamous defense of Hill 7. When his forces were on the verge of collapse, Cross ordered his armored units to feign retreat, drawing the attackers into a carefully prepared kill zone. As the enemy advanced, expecting a rout, concealed anti-tank teams and artillery opened up, inflicting devastating losses. It was a move reminiscent of the Russian General Kutuzov's scorched earth tactics against Napoleon, or even the surprise counterattacks launched by General George Patton in the Battle of the Bulge. Such feats cemented Cross's reputation for turning defeat into victory. Yet genius often comes with a hidden cost. Cross's insistence on centralizing command made his army agile and resilient, but it also made it brittle. Like the queen on a chessboard, his removal would not just disrupt the command structure, it could freeze it entirely. History abounds with similar examples. When Admiral Yamamoto, the architect of Japanese naval strategy in World War II, was killed in an ambush, Japan's strategic initiative collapsed almost overnight. The lesson is stark. To underestimate the power concentrated in a single leader is to risk disaster. But how do you catch a man who seems to vanish into thin air, a commander who trusts no one, who changes locations at random, and who encrypts every message with state-of-the-art American technology? The answer lies in patience, ingenuity, and a willingness to embrace the unconventional. The hunt for Cross began in cyberspace. Direct attacks on his communications failed. His encryption was top-tier, battle-tested, and unbroken. Realizing they would not catch Cross by charging the front door, the intelligence team changed their approach. Instead of targeting the center, they mapped the edges, looking for the faintest ripples in the vast ocean of digital data. They combed through metadata, scanning for anomalies in satellite traffic, radio transmissions, and even supply chains. The breakthrough did not come from Cross himself, but from his adjutant, Captain David Ricks. Ricks, meticulous and loyal, maintained a private correspondence with his fiancée in Chicago. One seemingly innocuous complaint, a delayed delivery of rare Irish whiskey, a brand favored by Cross and sourced from Lviv, caught the analyst's attention. This was the needle in the haystack. By cross-referencing the whiskey's logistics records with spikes in encrypted radio traffic, the team built a pattern. They discovered that every time the whiskey was delivered, there was a corresponding surge in encrypted satellite communications from a specific area. Within 48 hours, satellite imagery confirmed their suspicions. A delivery van matching the whiskey supplier's details arrived at a ruined sanatorium in the remote Carpathian foothills. The moment the van left, a new burst of encrypted radio followed. For the first time, the digital clues and real-world evidence converged on a single, isolated stronghold. But satellites could only tell part of the story. Human intelligence was needed to close the trap. Local assets were recruited, among them, a trusted gamekeeper familiar with every hidden path through the mountain forests. He quietly mapped guard rotations, surveillance posts, and even the habits of the compound's kitchen staff. Meanwhile, a food delivery driver confirmed the presence of massive gourmet orders, quantities that could only suggest a high-level command post. The final confirmation came at great risk. Under the cover of a controlled forest fire, a diversion orchestrated by the operatives themselves, agents infiltrated the perimeter. Amid the swirling smoke and confusion, they caught sight of heavily armed guards, their movements betraying elite training. The location of Cross's command post was now certain. The stakes were higher than ever. Failure could mean the loss of irreplaceable operatives and the priceless advantage of surprise. If Cross slipped away, the enemy's defenses would snap shut, and the entire effort would be for naught. The planners faced a brutal choice: destroy the stronghold with a missile strike, hoping Cross was inside, or risk a surgical capture, aiming to take him alive and break the enemy's will from within. This decision would shape not just the battle, but the entire course of the war. There was no turning back, only the hope that one audacious gambit could tip the balance for good. There was zero margin for error. Every second of the assault would decide the fate of thousands. The command staff weighed their options with heavy hearts. A missile strike would be fast and decisive, but risked obliterating not only General Cross, but also any intelligence he carried, plans, codes, and insights that could shift the entire war. On the other hand, a capture meant unimaginable risk. The team would have to infiltrate a fortress, overcome elite guards, and spirit away the most valuable prisoner in the theater. Yet, if successful, they would seize not just a man, but the keys to the enemy's kingdom. Before dawn, elite special operators melted into the misty Carpathian woods. They crept in silence, threading a deadly maze of booby traps and sentries, every movement choreographed from months of intelligence. Even the dew on the leaves was factored in, lest a stray drop betray their presence. Every detail was rehearsed. One mistake meant failure. The assault was a masterstroke of precision. Timers ticked down. 3 squads breached the compound at once, neutralizing outer guards with suppressed weapons. Inside, close-quarters teams disabled alarms, subdued 2 bodyguards, and advanced on Cross's private quarters. In under 2 minutes, they had their prize. General Cross, alive, disarmed, and with his encrypted satchel in hand. But the danger was only beginning. As the team hustled Cross through the woods, alarms triggered a ferocious enemy response. Reinforcements surged in from all directions. Mines exploded along the escape route, injuring 2 operators. Overhead, drones buzzed, guiding artillery fire ever closer. It became a running battle through the trees, every step dogged by gunfire and chaos. Yet the team pressed on, coordinated and relentless. In under 20 minutes, helicopters swept in, extracting the team and their captive under a curtain of covering fire. The stakes could not have been higher. Had they failed, the blow to morale and the war effort would have been catastrophic. Instead, they had not only captured the enemy's greatest commander, but seized his codes, maps, and secrets, tools that could upend the entire war. In a single night, the balance of power shifted. With Cross in custody, the real battle was just beginning. For all his fame, Cross was a man of iron will. Initial interrogations yielded nothing. He stared down his questioners, hardened by years of command. But the operatives used psychology, not brutality. They showed Cross proof that his superiors had abandoned hope of his rescue, that they were already moving on without him. The betrayal stung deeper than any torture, and Cross's resolve began to crack. The intelligence windfall was instant and immense. Cross's personal devices, previously locked behind layers of encryption, yielded a complete blueprint for an imminent enemy offensive, set to launch in less than 3 days. Maps, unit rosters, encrypted orders, all current, all actionable, fell into their hands. With this treasure trove and Cross's broken resistance, the defenders moved swiftly. They orchestrated ambushes along every anticipated axis of advance, using Cross's own knowledge against his former army. When the enemy battalions surged forward, expecting to sweep the field, they instead blundered into layered traps, their formations shattered by hidden artillery, mines, and flanking attacks. The plan was reminiscent of the Allies' use of ultra-intelligence in World War II, when the capture of German codes allowed them to set deadly traps for U-boats and panzer divisions alike. The results were devastating. Losses in men and equipment soared, but the psychological blow was even greater. Officers hesitated, communications faltered, and a command structure built around Cross's genius began to crumble. When word of his capture spread, panic took root. In the trenches, rumors ran wild. Orders were questioned, discipline frayed, and junior commanders balked at taking the initiative. This is the double-edged sword of captured intelligence. Handled skillfully, it magnifies every victory and sows chaos among your enemies. Misused, it is a squandered miracle. In this case, The defenders exploited every advantage, shifting not just the battle lines, but the very momentum of the war. The aftermath of Cross's fall rippled far beyond the immediate conflict. Both sides now faced a transformed war, one where trust, fear, and uncertainty would redraw the rules. History offers many parallels. When General Paulus surrendered at Stalingrad, the German Sixth Army disintegrated, and the Eastern Front was never the same again. In business and politics, too, the sudden removal of a visionary CEO or a charismatic leader can send shockwaves through entire organizations, as seen when Steve Jobs left Apple, or when Margaret Thatcher was ousted as Prime Minister. Sometimes, one audacious strike rewrites the rules of the struggle. The capture of General Michael Cross was more than just a tactical victory. It was a calculated shock that fractured the enemy's foundation. Rather than bleed dry through endless assaults, the Allied strategists had pinpointed the true weak link: Cross's central grip on command. When the plan succeeded, the enemy's hierarchy disintegrated in a matter of days, paralyzed by doubt and confusion. History is full of failed attempts to batter obstacles with overwhelming force. Massive offensives, superior firepower, dazzling technology. These promise quick results, but often deliver stalemate or disaster against a resilient foe. The true breakthrough comes from exposing the hidden seams in complex systems, the places where everything depends on a single point. Cross's brilliance made him irreplaceable, but that same dependence turned him into the system's fatal flaw. This insight extends far beyond the battlefield. In business, politics, or any domain where the stakes are high, the natural instinct is to overpower rivals with sheer effort or resources. Yet the most decisive victories belong to those who discern and exploit the underlying structural vulnerabilities. With a focused, strategic move, it is possible to accomplish in a single week what years of brute labor could not. Think of the resources saved, the setbacks avoided, and the opportunities seized, simply by zeroing in on the true levers of influence. To ignore this lesson is to risk everything. Focusing on displays of strength while overlooking the real fault lines wastes precious time and can lead to irreversible losses. It is the difference between playing by the old rules and becoming the one who changes the game entirely. So when the challenge comes, on the battlefield, in negotiation, or in your own life, ask not how hard you can strike, but where you can strike so that the rest unravels. That shift is more than just a tactic. It is a revolution in how you win. The capture of General Cross is a testament to the enduring truth that sometimes the fate of nations and the outcome of great struggles can hinge on the cunning, courage, and clarity to strike at the heart, not just the armor. The question, then, is not whether you have the strength to fight, but whether you have the vision to see where to strike so everything else falls away.